Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. Well, we've been studying Esther, and Haman, the enemy of the Jews, has been hanged on the gallows that he himself had built to impale Mordecai upon. He has been quite literally foisted onto his own petard. If you ever wanted to know what that phrase meant, it meant exactly what happened to Haman. That he was impaled on the very thing he had planned to impale others upon, and so he has died. But there still exists this law that cannot be revoked that the Jews are to be killed, and so um, Esther has to deal with this. The first order of business is that Mordecai becomes exalted on in chapter 8, verses 1 and 2. On that day, Ahasuerus gave the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther, and Mordecai came before the king, and Esther had disclosed what he was to her, which he's her stepdad. He's her kinsman who raised her as his own daughter. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken away from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And so Esther gives the house that the king had given to her to Mordecai to live in. Um, and so Esther then requests to the king, we can't revoke this law, but let us defend ourselves. And so the king makes that law that the Jews should arm themselves and defend themselves against their enemies, and it is immediately dispatched to his entire kingdom. Couriers hastened and, impelled by the king's command, went out riding on royal steeds, and the decree was given out. Verse 14. And what happened was that in each province the Jews successfully defended themselves. In fact, they did more than that. They identified all of their enemies and they went and killed them all. they went and eliminated those throughout the provinces who had singled them out as Jews and who had been persecuting them because they were Jews. In fact, many people of the land, were told in verse 17, actually became Jews, for the dread of the Jews had fallen on them. So they're trying to pass as Jews, or they become proselytes themselves because of the position that the Jews held. In fact, we are even told that Haman's sons were killed, um, and 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman, all of his people were killed, and therefore, the complete destruction of the Amalekites was accomplished. So that's what happened. But there's more. The king commanded that it should be done so, and edicts were issued, and Haman's 10 sons were hanged. And then it says this, and the Jews who were in Susa assembled also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and killed 300 men in Susa, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. I love this part. We think of the tables being turned and they're being ruthless towards other people. It's the Old Testament. and and they are, people have come out against them to kill them, and they have the opportunity to destroy their enemies, and they do completely destroy their enemies, but they take no plunder. Now the king has assigned rewards to Esther and to Mordecai because of what had been done to them and because of the service they had rendered to the king, but that's not the same as them taking their own plunder. And I just love that last line, but they did not lay their hands on any plunder. Okay. When we're together next time, we'll talk about how they will commemorate this glorious day upon which they defended themselves and ridded themselves of their enemies. It's not. Let's not think of this like Michael Corleone did whenever Connie's baby was baptized and had literally all of his enemies assassinated. They have found themselves the victims here, and they were given the opportunity to defend themselves, and they did. And they didn't go overboard when they did. They didn't take plunder. They just they stood their ground and defended themselves as the king said they could, and they ended up destroying all of their enemies. Okay, we'll talk about the way they decided to commemorate this day next time, which is the point of the book. I'm Barry Bryson, and we'll continue our study of the book of Esther then. Thank you for joining me.